So we are, we're doing notes. We're going to talk about how our bodies, really, this is about how our bodies regulate themselves, how different parts of our body communicate with each other. And that happens through the action of a system that we call the endocrine system. So the human endocrine system is really about sending signals from one part of the body to another. And it does that, the endocrine system does that using special types of molecules called hormones. And hormones are made of proteins. So we've talked about proteins when we talked about enzymes. What is important about a protein? It's why do enzymes work? Because of their pH can change this, temperature can change
substrate,
their shape. It's the shape. All proteins have a specific function that comes about because of their shape. And so in the human body, there are special organs that are called glands, endocrine glands, and they produce these hormones. And they release them into our blood, where they circulate around throughout our entire body. And certain hormones have their effect on certain tissues in our body. And so the key thing to remember about these hormones is that it's their shape that allows them to function, which allows them to send a message from one part of the body to another part of the body. So, do you remember when we talked about the cell membrane? That embedded in that cell membrane are certain proteins. And those proteins act as what we call receptor molecules. They're kind of listening in for some signal from another tissue. And that signal is a hormone. Okay? And the shape of the hormone matches with the shape of the receptor molecule. And when they connect and bind together, that's what sends the signal to the target cell, to the target tissue. So we have all sorts of different hormones in our body. And their levels go up and down. Some hormones regulate our metabolism. Some hormones regulate reproductive cycles, our growth. All of these things can be influenced by these different hormones. So we'll talk about some of them specifically. But to look at this diagram, these two diagrams basically kind of show us the same idea. This is a cell in one of our endocrine glands. Maybe it's in our pancreas. Our pancreas is what produces insulin. So these glands send hormones into our blood where they're circulating throughout our entire body. And if they encounter on their travels throughout the body the right receptor molecule, then they will have some effect on that target cell. You could see this blue hormone matches with these receptor molecules. So it's going to probably cause something to happen with the cell, cause some change to happen. If this cell didn't have the proper receptor molecules, this hormone would not affect it at all. It would just go right past it because it doesn't have the proper receptor molecules. So if we look at this diagram over here, can I move this? I guess not. What we see is that there's two different hormones, the circle and the triangle one. The circle one would affect this cell because it has the proper receptor molecules. This one, this middle cell, would be affected by both of them because it has both the receptor for the circle and for the triangle. And then this cell would only be affected by the triangle hormone. Here's just another view. There's the way I've been talking about hormones is this way, that the hormone attaches to a receptor molecule, and then it causes some stuff to happen inside of the cells. And our hormones typically work on this feedback system that you guys studied when we talked about homeostasis. That when one hormone level goes up and changes the body in some way, oftentimes that change causes the hormone level to drop again. And so there's this feedback between different hormones. If the level of one gets too high, typically it's counteracted by another. And we'll talk about an example. Don't worry about the one that's listed on this slide. This is talking about the thyroid stimulating hormone, TSH. This is a hormone that helps control our body's metabolism. Today in your activity that you're doing about diagnosing diabetes, you're going to be looking at another set of hormones, insulin and glucagon. They're two hormones that are important in regulating our blood sugar. Our blood sugar is really important. Right? We need sugar in our blood to provide glucose to our cells for respiration so they can have energy. But too much sugar in our blood can be dangerous. It could damage our nerves, could damage our kidneys. If it's too low, then our cells don't have enough energy. And so it's important that in our blood we have the proper amount of blood sugar, that we're maintaining homeostasis. Okay. Typical normal blood glucose levels are around 100 or so. But let's say, for example, you went out to lunch, you got a giant bag of Skittles, and you ate it all, and a Mountain Dew. And so right now in your digestive system, that sugar from what you had is going into your blood. So right now as you drink a giant Arizona iced tea, the sugar from that is moving into your blood. And your blood glucose level is starting to rise. That's normal as your body absorbs it. But if it stayed too high, that could be dangerous. It could damage your kidneys or your nerves. So what happens is this. So your blood glucose level goes high. Your pancreas is kind of monitoring it. So it's monitoring your blood sugar level at all times. When your pancreas notices your blood sugar level starting to go up because of this giant Arizona iced tea you're drinking, it sends a signal. Your pancreas starts making insulin. Insulin's a hormone. It's a protein. It goes all throughout your entire body. And when it gets to cells in your liver, it tells them. It binds to the receptor molecule and it tells those cells, hey, too much sugar in the blood. You need to get it out of there. And so your liver starts taking in that glucose. And so the level in your blood comes down. And you're back at homeostasis. Let's say after drinking this Arizona iced tea right now, you don't eat again until 8:30 at night. So at 8 at night, your body's been using energy and your blood sugar level starts to drop. That's not good either. You're going to feel tired. And so your body's not getting glucose to release energy. So your body produces a different hormone. Again, your pancreas is monitoring things. It's monitoring your blood sugar. When your blood sugar level drops, your pancreas says, oh, this isn't good either. And it makes another hormone called glucagon. Glucagon basically does the opposite. When glucagon gets to your liver cells, it says, hey, blood sugar is too low. Give me some of it. Put it into the blood. And so your liver does that, and your glucose level in your blood goes back, maintaining homeostasis. And this process will repeat many times each day, depending on your blood sugar level. And we see that here. We can see in a graph, after meals, our blood glucose level rises, and then our insulin level rises to take it back down, and that process will repeat over and over again as our blood sugar level rises. Yeah. No, 4 or 5. 5 or 4. I think maybe I missed, because there's 26.
There's 26 of us?
Yeah. The 2 10th graders.
Yeah.
Caroline,
I have
Aaron.
overchecked. Maybe I'm missing myself. I don't know.
Oh, maybe.
One of it.
Okay.
So 5 4s and 2 3s.
5, 4, 6, 2.
So that's it. My bad.
Thank you.
Yeah. And so our blood glucose and insulin levels rise and fall throughout the day. Now, there are lots of different diseases that come about when our endocrine organs don't function properly. And probably the most common one, and the one you're familiar with, is diabetes. That's what our activity today is about. When a person is diabetic, their pancreas, for some reason, doesn't produce insulin properly, or their body doesn't respond to it properly. And so, what does a person do if they have diabetes? How do they handle that medically?
Insulin shot.
When would a person with diabetes give themselves insulin?
When it's too hot.
When what?
The blood sugar.
Right. After a person with diabetes eats something, they probably test their blood sugar. They could do a little finger prick and you have a little monitor. Or sometimes they might have a pump that monitors it automatically. There's lots of different ways you can manage it. But yeah, if their blood sugar level goes up, or if they just had a meal, then they may have to give themselves insulin. It's synthetic insulin. Their body's not making it themselves. So they could inject themselves. That's getting less common. They might have an insulin pump that gives it to them. They just press a couple buttons and it infuses it into their body. Others insulin inhalers. Some people wear like a pod on their arm that they can give themselves insulin. There's all different ways to do it. And this insulin brings their blood sugar down. What about a person with diabetes when their blood sugar goes low? Do you know what they usually do? Yeah, they eat something. Sometimes they might carry with them like candy or glucose tablets that can help bring their blood sugar up quickly, because they can feel if they're starting to get low, and they'll just take something, have a piece of candy to increase their blood sugar again. So they have to manage their own blood sugar because their pancreas for some reason is not doing it. There's other types of endocrine disorders. Hypo or hyperthyroidism are disorders of the thyroid gland. Your thyroid gland's in your neck. It looks actually like a bow tie around your neck, and it produces hormones that regulate our metabolism. Some people can have an underactive thyroid gland, and therefore they have a low metabolism. Okay, and that may lead to a low metabolism, an underactive thyroid gland, a low heart rate. A person with hypothyroidism may have a tendency to gain weight easily because their metabolism is very low. The opposite is also a condition, hyperthyroidism, where you have an excess of thyroid hormone. A person with this condition, they might typically be underweight, and they can't put on weight, and their metabolism is fast. They may have a really high heart rate. They may have certain characteristic appearance. I'll show you. So these show some examples. So here's the thyroid gland. It's in the neck. And when it's not functioning properly, it can actually swell up and form what's called a goiter. This is an extreme case. It could just be sort of an enlarged thyroid gland. That tissue, when it's not working properly, can swell up. In an extreme case, it could swell up really, really large like that. What was I going to say? Oh, your thyroid gland, in order to work the hormones, they need iodine as a nutrient. You need small amounts of iodine in your diet. Do you know where we often get it. Have you ever seen any food product that's iodized? Have you ever heard of that? Oftentimes salt. If you look on a salt, go in your kitchen, look on a salt container, it might say iodized salt. It means they've added iodine to it to give people enough, because deficiency of iodine causes some of these thyroid problems. If it happens when a child is still growing, it can lead to cretinism or dwarfism. Here's some glucose test equipment and insulin that is used to treat people with diabetes. There's other, so your pituitary gland is a endocrine gland in your base of your brain. It produces a hormone called human growth hormone, HGH. This is really important, especially at your age. At your age, periodically, certain times, your pituitary gland releases growth hormone into your blood. It circulates around your body. When it attaches to receptor molecules on your bones and muscles, it causes them to grow. And so when you go through growth spurts, what's happening is your pituitary gland is producing growth hormone, causing your bones to grow, causing your muscles to grow, causing you to grow taller. Some people are born with conditions when they produce too little growth hormone and they don't grow to an average height. Some people are born, oftentimes it's with a tumor on their pituitary gland, and they produce too much growth hormone. That could lead to gigantism, person growing to an excessively large height. Here's a person with a lack of growth hormone. You know who that is?
Yeah, I can't remember his name.
Short guy. I know who that is.
From, oh yeah, you're a big fan, Joe. Game of Thrones. Peter Dinklage, right? Yeah. Tyrion Lannister from Game of Thrones. You know who this guy is?
Big guy.
Familiar.
WWE guy.
Andre the Giant. He is a wrestler back in my day when I saw him wrestle at the Utica Odd when I was a kid. But he had actually a pituitary condition. He grew so tall, he was 7'4", because he was producing excess of growth hormone. And so, yeah, that's Andre the Giant. But those conditions are caused by an imbalance in these growth hormones. There's other disorders as well of the adrenal gland and so forth, but they all have impacts on human health. The tallest person to ever live is Robert Wadlow. Wadlow, I think his name was. He was born with a pituitary gland tumor that was inoperable. And so usually once you reach, 16, 17, 18, you stop growing. Your pituitary gland stops producing growth hormone. It depends on the person. And he had this tumor. He produced it his whole life. He never stopped growing. Even he was in his 20s, I think, when he died. He was still growing taller even in his late 20s. And I forget, he was 8 feet. Was he 8'10"? I don't know if that's right. I'd have to look it up again. But he was enormous. He actually died because his joints couldn't support his huge size. And so he had to wear these braces on his legs. And actually one of them caused like an abrasion, which got infected, and he died from that infection. So our endocrine glands coordinate lots of different things. We're going to also talk about eventually the reproductive system, testosterone, estrogen, progesterone. These are all hormones that are involved in reproductive cycles, and we'll talk about those. But they're all working the same way. They're produced in a certain tissue, circulate around the entire body, affecting specific tissues when they attach to receptor molecules. So that's what you should really grasp. Hormones act on tissues that have the proper receptor molecules. Okay? That's how our endocrine system works.